What's going on? Hello. I'm joking. It's a joke. Good morning and welcome everyone to episode 27, I think it is, of Mortgage News Live, coming to you from the very heart of misty London. Thank you for joining us, and thanks always to our sponsors, MPowered. We have another unbelievable show lined up this morning where we'll be discussing yesterday's budget. For those of you who missed it, what the hell have you been doing? Don't worry, we will go through the main points that affect our industry. So what of the market then over the past couple of weeks? Well, whilst it's all been about preparation for the big fiscal event that is the budget, we have seen a cacophony of conflicting data that looked yet again to indicate that a November Bank of England base rate cut was back on the cards after having not been on the cards, after having been on the cards. Like some of my old relationship, it really is a one moment it's on, the next it's and then back type of year. The issue is lenders do not quite seem to know what to do, as it's hard to build any secure structure on shifting sand. Hence, we have continued to see some lenders up rates while others reduce them, and some putting rates up and down at the very same time. Pricing meetings must be a barrel of laughs at the moment. Showing how uncertain things are globally, the price of gold hit a new all-time high, and we also saw the European Central Bank cut rates to 3.25%. However, has the budget changed all this with an astonishing £40 billion worth of tax rises? The Office for Budget Responsibility feels that overall this budget's policy measures increase inflation by 0.4 percentage points and will increase interest rates and gilt rates by 0.25%. Whether it was as terrible as expected is up for debate, but agree or not with the content, it was delivered in an assured, professional style, and it was refreshing to see the first woman Chancellor ever deliver a budget. Already I've seen press releases and comments saying both she went too far or she didn't go far enough, from saying there could be a brain drain of talent leaving these shores in search of sunnier climes to those that say an opportunity was missed to make real change. But enough about me waxing lyrical. Let's hear from people who really matter. Today's luxurious panel of experts. Joining us are Ken James, the MD of Contractor Mortgage Services. Hello, Ken.
Hello, guys.
Paul Kane, Head of Intermediary Distribution at MPowered. Hi, Paul.
Morning. Good morning.
Another Paul, which is going to confuse me, Paul Purewell, who's the Corporate Account Manager at Coventry, the Cuddly Cov. Hello, Paul.
Morning, Monty. Morning, everyone.
And last but not least, Phil Livesey, who is the Director of Mortgages, ooh, fancy title, Phil, at LDN Finance.
Morning,
Hello,
Monty.
Phil.
How you doing?
Welcome. So it's good to have you all here. So there's been a budget. First question then, how did you feel about it when it was going on? How did it make you feel in the immediate aftermath? Because I know we've had time to digest it now, but I'm quite interested. People feel something different right when they're listening to it, and at the moment it ends to when they've actually digested stuff. So Ken, let's start with you. How did you feel about it generally?
Sorry, guys, I can't hear.
Okay, well that's a great start. So if the technical did someone call him on WhatsApp and that's why he got cut off? Go on, Phil, I'll come to you then in a seamless mood.
I'm ready. So how did I feel? It was long.
It was very long.
There was the obvious initial period where she spent a bit of time, probably too much time, slating what has gone before. I think it's probably important to have touched on that. I saw somebody on Twitter say, "Put the fries in the bag." You get on with it. But generally, a bit of relief actually. I probably spent a bit too much time on social media in the week preceding and saw quite a lot of hysteria. helped by the Prime Minister's comments, which just absolutely dismal communication. But bit of relief, because I think what Reeves has done is a pretty good job of trailing the news beforehand and actually delivering something that's not quite as bad as we all anticipated or feared.
Yeah, I think that was interesting. They did get told off by the speaker, didn't they, for trailing too much of the budget, first of all, which I thought was good. Mr. Kane, how do you feel about it?
Well, glad it's over. In reality, I mean, it seemed to be the trading is absolutely right, and I think that's probably something that was ideally planned to ensure there was no surprises and the markets didn't react unfavorably. But yeah, I mean, I thought she did a very polished performance, and I think, you know, she's in a difficult position, wasn't she? You know, so my overriding thing, just sort of sitting back and reflecting on it. You know, if it was a budget for invest and growth, I'm not sure that the OBR take on where they think the budget will go is achieve that.
No.
But on the other hand, you know, I mean, we've all probably got personal experience of the state of the NHS and some of the schools. We need to invest in public services. So I think it's a trade-off. It's probably, you know, it's probably balanced in that respect, in that it is trying to invest and it is also trying to do stuff for public services, which is sorely needed. So I just hope that we don't have any more conversation about the definition of a working person. And actually, I think, you know, we need to start looking forward now. You know, I don't want to hear any more about a black hole, and I don't want to hear about any more 14 years of what's gone before. Now's the time to say, okay, this is what we're going to do, and how do we go forward, and how does the economy hopefully grow? And we just see the economy working better. So, you know, we can argue whether we think she's done the right thing or the wrong thing on individual policies, but just start looking forward now and just get on with it. With my reflection on it.
And Paul, what about yourself?
I didn't get to watch it live. I was in a meeting for most of the day, so I was relying on WhatsApp and Twitter and friends to say this has happened and this has happened. So, I mean, there was so much anticipation, wasn't it? It almost reminded me of you meeting your girlfriend for a first date, and you might have to meet her father at the door. There's loads of nerves about what's actually going to happen next. But actually, I sort of agree with the comments so far. It could have been worse. There was lots and lots of people, you know, forecasting what's going to happen in this area. But actually, if you're taking the view that she's got the in tray for her is pretty damning. And if anyone else had to work out how we're going to reduce this fiscal debt, it's got to be done sort of proportionately. There's going to be some, I'm sure we're going to go through some of the segments and say, yeah, there's going to be some collateral damage along the way. But let's look ahead, like Paul's just said, and see where we are in a couple of years. Hopefully a lot of the debt has been wiped out by then, and we can look forward to the UK being in a better place.
I did like her end bit where she said, these are, and she took big responsibility. She said, look, these are my decisions. If you don't like them, tell me what you would do. And I really like that challenge to the opposition. Ken, can you hear us now?
I can. Sorry about that. Yeah, I did warn that if anybody calls me on WhatsApp, I may have a collapse.
It wasn't me. I didn't call
you.
I
know. You did threaten it. No, it was someone else who I'll be having to work with that.
It's all about preparation, Ken.
It is, yeah.
Anyway, so how did you feel just the moment the budget ended?
Do you know what? Straight away, we knew that there was going to be like a plethora of calls about, you know, deals collapsing because landlords maybe hadn't budgeted. People who were doing let to buys, who all of a sudden their numbers were very fine, and all of a sudden now they've got this extra money because they haven't exchanged yet. Extra money they're going to have to find. How's that going to happen? And I did a TikTok post. It was mentioned earlier, and the funny thing with that is you've got varying degrees of sort of sensibility. You've got people saying, well, we could see where she's trying to go and she's trying to bring the economy back into check. And then you've got other people saying such a last minute sort of ridiculous sort of decisions. But I think the most important thing that I was seeing is that people's lack of awareness that if you think that someone's getting a second property or is fortunate enough to be able to invest in a buy-to-let, that they've got pots of money lying around that all of a sudden they can just find. and that they're wealthy, and because they can get a second property, they can afford anything that the Chancellor might throw at them. And that's not really true. I did like the way that she threw it back to the Conservatives in regards to the fact she's protecting them if they start losing jobs. I thought that was very humorous. And what was really impressive actually was how staunch and sort of aggressive Rishi was at the end. And maybe if he'd have shown some of that mettle while he was running the country, maybe there could have been a different outcome for him. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. Left you with a sense of what the hell's going to happen next. But I think, like Paul Kane said, though, I think now we need to just look forward. This is what it is, regardless of what we think about it. It's, let's start looking forward and just play the cards that we've been dealt.
So the two pools from a lender's point of view, have you seen the markets react? Because we've seen gilts go up, we've seen swaps go up after they've gone down, but it doesn't look to be anywhere near as serious or any issues.
I think it's priced in on
terrible trust.
It was well traded, and we've seen like you say, a marginal increase in gilts and swaps, but it's not like the Liz Truss budget, right? So I think it's in that respect, I think it's the market has accepted it. In obviously we'll have to see what happens in the coming days to see if we see any more of a reaction, but the initial reaction doesn't appear to be anything spectacular. So, but I guess what it is now, it's about delivery, isn't it? It's you've got to you've set out your plan, you've got to deliver on your numbers. So some of the things that from the OBR forecast of the budget seems to indicate that sort of mortgage pricing relatively stable, maybe going up a little bit. Inflation looks to be above the 2% target over the period. So does that give the bank giving any wriggle room to move on base rate? You mentioned earlier, Monty, is it going to be cut? Isn't it on off? So we might just have what I think we were all probably calling out for a year, 18 months ago, is a period of kind of stability. It just settles, and it is where it is. To go back to your point, that helps us as lenders in terms of pricing models and gives you a little bit more certainty. So I don't know if Paul would agree or disagree. I don't see there's been a big reaction from the markets from yesterday's budget.
Paul, do you think your pricing meetings will change on the back of this, or you still set your stall out? Your expectations of a November rate cut are still there?
I think it is. I think even yesterday, we've seen the swaps move today, and again, you could argue that you could say, well, some of them moved almost to like double-digit increases. So it depends on how you want to shock everyone by saying, look, how big of an increase is that? But yeah, I absolutely think that the 25 basis cut is still on the cards next week. We've been playing for that for some time. Pricing meetings are always going to be interesting, regardless of what period of the year it is. So we've moved back on rates in the last couple of weeks. We were in the market quite a bit in September. So, but again, if you think about, I know we're going to move on to stamp duty soon. We've got some different dates for different people, some cut very quickly. But there's an opportunity for the market to become quite buoyant, especially for sort of first-time buyers who might be thinking ahead of April next year that they might want to do things soon, or even home movers to avoid paying a little bit of extra surcharge. So there's still some really good opportunity there.
Yeah. Just a reminder to people who are watching, listening, we've got some comments. So if you want to engage, ask some questions, or just provide some comments, then please do. We'll get to as many as possible. Sam said it was a difficult balance. We need to invest in the country and provide public services while getting rid of debt. It has to be paid from somewhere. It was just from where, which, that's true. Chris saw comments yesterday which said that 5% of nothing is still zero. An increased second property stamp duty will cause a huge issue in this private landlord market. So let's seamlessly go into that then. And Phil and Ken, from your perspective, Phil, that change then, the 2% of stamp duty for those with 2 or more properties. Have you already seen deals stutter? Is it a nail in the coffin for buy to let, or do you believe, like I do actually, the market is more resilient than that?
Yeah, I mean, the market certainly is more resilient than we we all fear. Well, to start with, it was a surprise, right? I mean, I don't think, I certainly wasn't expecting that. And we can debate the merits of increasing the additional surcharge, and we will. But I think that the main thing for me was the kind of felt a bit mean-spirited for it to take effect today. I certainly wouldn't like to have been a conveyancer yesterday. I imagine a lot of them are working till midnight trying to get contracts exchanged.
Yeah.
But I mean, the reality is that the investor market has changed significantly, and that change started back in 2015. And George Osborne had a clear desire to professionalise that market, and in a sense, that has broadly been achieved. I look at our numbers within LDN, and in the last 12 months, 75% of new purchases have been in some kind of corporate structure. Admittedly, a lot of those will be in corporations. We might see probably some people are going to have to revisit the numbers now to see if that still stacks up. I think if you're an investor and the numbers now don't work with a 5% surcharge, and you're thinking long term, then the numbers were probably not going to stack up anyway. So I don't see it having too much of an impact. We've had a few calls anecdotally about from kind of in-flight buyers wondering whether it's still worthwhile proceeding. But as of 16 minutes past 11 on the following day, nothing has fallen through just yet, and everything is ticking along as it was going to.
Michelle's just commented that she's already lost 2 let to buys this morning.
I just saw that as I was finishing my sentence, so apologies, Michelle.
Yeah, it's a real mixed bag. I guess there is a difference also between let to buys, which are a lot more price sensitive, aren't they?
Yeah.
Than potentially an investor buying. And is it the same for corporates? If you're buying in a limited company, you've got that. That's gone up as well, isn't it? Ken, what about you? You had clients.
Yeah, I mean,
it's all about renegotiation, isn't it now?
Yeah, it is to some degree, and I agree with Phil. You know, the changes have been coming for a while, and professional landlords certainly have adapted and sort of changed to sort of meet whatever is thrown at them. And there's been a lot thrown at them, let's be honest. There's been a lot of things over the last few years that they've had to contend with. The let to buy market, just stepping back to that, as I said, I got a call from a client, and it is tight margins. I think the buy lets, like Phil said, if you can't sort of manage to throw that in and sort of manage it, then maybe it wasn't the right, if your numbers were that tight. So I think the professional landlords in that space will just adapt. I think the real sort of bitterness of it is the speed of implementation.
Yeah.
You know, if it was like a lot of the things that they're doing, right, next year, the new tax year, this will be how it is. People will have had time to deal with the deals that they're going through at the moment and plan moving forward to that time frame. A bit like when we move into the stamp duty, and we're talking about that first-time buyers now are going to have to start really gearing up if they want to get in before that threshold. Buy-to-lets, investments, let-to-buys would have had that lead-in time. And I think that's really the difficult thing for us. Buy-to-lets for 2023 for me were dead. I don't know about Phil or the businesses, you know, the Coventries and MPowered, but did very, very little business in 2023 because of all the increased stress rates and the calculations. Made it very difficult for landlords. And for those remortgage deals as well were very difficult. But leading into the state that we're in now, I just wanted more lead time. I think that it's like the rug has just been pulled from underneath you, and you've hit the ground with your head, you banged, you've got up, you're a bit dizzy. What the hell's just happened? It's that sort of feeling.
Yeah, I think that that comment from Chris is actually if they're gonna increase it so fast and deals are gonna fall through, well, they're not going to get anything.
Well, yeah, exactly.
So it would have been better to at least get 3% of deals that actually go through rather than nothing. And even if they gave it till the 1st of December or even the 1st of January, just a little bit of time. Yeah. And that would bring more stamp duty receipts in, because it does hurry people up, doesn't it?
It does raise the question of what was the motive behind it. Was it to raise more, or was it to stall the market? I mean, it doesn't seem to make sense to just bring something in so quick if you're trying to raise money for the black hole that we have.
I think there's probably some people within the Treasury or offering some guidance that have got long memories and can remember back to Q1 in 2016, which was just a bit of a crazy period. And I think in hindsight, the implementation period then was too long. That doesn't
Yeah,
mean there shouldn't
agree.
be one now. I mean, I agree, Monty. I think if they'd have run it till the end of this year, I think they're also mindful of the other changes to stamp duty that are taking effect at the end of March as
Yeah.
well. Doesn't mean you couldn't have a staggered approach to it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then so let's look at that. So no change at the moment. And one thing I did like actually was she's been very clear in interviews afterwards that unlike the previous government, she's only going to do one budget a year, which means and under the Conservatives, it did mean you sort of had two, and then you had other announcements and fiscal events, and it almost seemed every 4 or 5 months there was something changing, something happening, some more tax. She's been like, bang, this is it.
And further
this
to
is
that
it
one,
for the next year.
Sorry to jump in, but
No, go on.
it's the first budget in a long time where the words long term were used, and I know a lot of the
Yes,
analysis
I love that. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the analysis has been that the OBR are not projecting such great growth figures, but the reality is there's £100 billion worth of investment there, which is an enormous sum, and a lot of the benefit of that isn't captured by the OBR because it's either they can't comment on what hasn't happened yet, or it's outside of the scope of what they're looking at because there's broadly a 10-year plan here, and this doesn't happen in UK politics.
Yeah.
There's obviously a lot of confidence that there'll be a second term. Whether or not that'll be the case, who knows? But it's refreshing to see politicians making long-term decisions.
Yeah, I think we forget that, and that's a very important point. I agree. So no change to the current stamp duty rules, set to go back to, I think it's 300 grand for first-time buyers and 125 for everyone else in April. So do you think you will see are you expecting a mini stamp duty holiday effect now, Paul, as the cuddly cov, obviously good buy-to-let lender in Godiva? Are you gearing up? Are you expecting to see that there'll be lots of
I think so.
lots of stuff, lots of first-time buyers for your main brand?
Yeah. Well, first-time buyers have, they've been challenged in lots of ways. Affordability has probably been one of the biggest coals to make things difficult. I know you did. I saw one of your recent videos, Monty, where you were talking to conveyancer, where they talked about, if it's 6.5 times income to get onto the ladder, or 10 times in London. Well, unfortunately, the affordability calculator from lender to lender, unless Paul Kane's going to say differently, we're not willing to sort of lend up to that much. So there's no breaking news from me. But yeah, absolutely. We saw it a couple of years ago with stamp duty that people decided to take advantage of the opportunity. Why not? We've got, people, even with conveyancing, we've got until April now for people to make those moves if they want to. And I've already heard from brokers. I sent a scattering of WhatsApp messages out last night saying, what's your thoughts? What's your plan? What's your strategy? And I think you'll see over social media over the next few days a few videos and posts saying this is a real opportunity. If you want to save some money in spite of all the affordability challenges, this is one way to do it. So obviously there's always going to be a challenge in terms of being able to, because everyone wants that constant, don't they? So we don't have to have massive peaks and troughs, because then you have to deal with the service pressures that come with that. But I think we'll be prepared. We'll be prepared for that now. Now we know the detail of what's going to happen.
Can I quote you on that? When
we'll be prepared.
And all lenders, please be prepared for potential.
All of us
uplifts.
need to be.
All of us need to be prepared, especially conveyancers.
I saw an article
100%.
this morning, guys. Sorry, Paul. I saw an article this morning, and I think it said something along the lines of, "There's 100. If the average time to complete is 157 days. So if you want to try and get your deal in within that time frame, realistically, today is the start of that 157 days." And I think on Newspage we've done articles on the things that are happening that we're in, and there's been a lot of press, obviously, as always. But I think it's staggering. It's a bit like when you start saying to people, "You've got 30 sleeps till Christmas." It's like you've got 157 sleeps till the end of this deal. People are going to have to take action. I think there will there be a stampede? I think if people are more aware, I think there has to be more awareness, and that's where things like articles through Newspage, through TikTok, through social media, through things like this, all of a sudden the blinkers, they'll like switch on and they go, "Oh, damn, we've really got to get moving."
Ken, have you got like 1,500 videos ready to go?
I might have a few. They won't be as informative.
You should count down the 100. Here's a free idea. Count down the 157 days.
Now you're talking my kind of talk.
There you go.
Very niche, Ken. Yeah,
I'll get on it.
I've lost my thread now. So Paul, what about from Mr. Kane?
Accelerate the pipeline, isn't it? There's now a cliff edge that consumers are going to work to. So I don't think it's the announcement's going to suddenly mean someone who wasn't thinking of buying is going to be thinking of buying today or starting that process. But I think they'll inevitably be, and you've got to choose your right conveyancer. I think that's really, really important. It will just bring your plans forward, and you've got a date to work to now. So, and undoubtedly, I can just see the pressures that will come with that. We've been here before, haven't we? And I think hopefully we've all learned some lessons in lender and broker world when we these sort of cliff edge dates. So I mean we just might see the market move a little bit quicker. So maybe a little bit more volume quicker than we thought that would come through.
Someone's called Ken on WhatsApp as well. Does he know he can turn WhatsApp off? So what about then small businesses? Because as one of the comments said, it's got to come from somewhere, and they have said no income tax, no capital gain, none of the other three main taxes are going to be changed for working people. I don't want to get into debate about working people because as a small business owner myself, apparently I'm not a working person. So that's annoying. But it does have to come from somewhere. Are we right to feel miffed with the rise in employers' national insurance? And despite the Chancellor's assertion on growth and investment, will this actually cause more issues and constrain growth? Or back to your point, Phil, is it just it's a long-term plan and we've got to take the pain now? But this will surely detract from small businesses employing more people, won't it? Ken, what do you think?
I think it's a double-edged sword. You give with one, you take away with the other. I think it's great. I mean, my daughter's a waitress at the moment in town, and it's going to be great for her. Yes. Oh, hello, Cat.
Give me some attention, Phil.
He's got more insight than I do. Yeah,
I tell you, it's a great thing. But yeah, I mean, she was delighted to hear that she, because she's on minimum wage, as a lot of kids are that working in town, and not even kids. There are people, mature people that work in that industry within the waitressing.
Absolutely.
That will feel a real reward that they've been recognised. And whilst yes, we always want more, and why wouldn't you? Actually, a 6.7 increase in that is massive when nothing's happened for years. But then to go to the business and say, but you must now pay more national insurance. It's like, well, we're paying them more money. We're paying more national insurance. Where do you want all this money to come from? So I think it's a real double-edged sword and a difficult time for small businesses for sure.
Yeah. And if you add in things like they're talking about full employment rates, protection from day one in terms of some of the employment rights that are coming in, which we all agree with. And this is sort of my point. Small businesses generally treat people well, they pay people decent, and they interact with the local community, they recruit from the local community, and it's gonna be an issue. Phil, what do you make of
it? So I'm always cautious to criticize people who are obviously much smarter than I am, and there's some seriously smart people in the Treasury. It just doesn't. The employer national insurance increase doesn't seem like a good idea, and it doesn't seem like it really benefits anyone other than raising tax receipts. I think probably politically they boxed themselves in the manifesto pledges. I think they probably realised, well, they certainly did because they've spoken about it enough, that the accounts weren't quite as rosy when they got to take a look at them when they took power, and it was the only way that they could raise additional tax receipts without broadly going back on a manifesto pledge. We're talking semantics here, I guess. It doesn't impact us in the sense that it's not going to make us change how we staff ourselves. It's not going to interrupt how we pay our staff. It's a cost that we're going to have to absorb. I think business owners are naturally very resilient people. They have to be, and this is just an additional challenge that's going to get thrown in the way. And I'm not a business owner, right? So for me to say this is probably a bit glib, but you either complain about it or you deal with it, I suppose. But yeah, it doesn't seem to make a great deal of sense. Although, does this help quell wage increases, and is that disinflationary, and is that a reason? I don't know.
Well, I heard a quote today from a business owner on the radio who said it's just basically going to mean that we won't be able to pay staff bonuses.
Yeah.
As expected, because it's got to pay for it somewhere.
Yeah, I think the OBR have reflected that, haven't they? They said that down the track, it's there's going to be an impact on working people. But I think to go to Phil's point is she was boxed in, wasn't she? She needed to raise the money. Where else could she have done it to the extent to which she has? So, and most business, I'm not a small business owner and never have been, but friends of mine that own their own business, they're incredibly passionate about their business. So I think they'll just deal with it. On the margins, does that mean that businesses won't employ that extra person? I think time will tell, but I think inevitably it's going to affect the working people down the track in terms of whether it be bonuses or wage rises in the future. So. But I guess it is what it is. She had to raise the money somewhere. That was probably the only place left that would be able to give her the receipts that she wanted.
Yeah. Does it any?
Sorry,
go on, Paul. No,
I was just going to say she used the quote: "We need healthy schools and healthy hospitals to then have healthy businesses as well." So she's protected herself well in that space.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think wage growth will be an interesting one to look at. And actually, if we're talking about the market and small businesses that are in our industry, then if demand goes up, then obviously you need to know how to deal with that demand. So I think that's where some of the sort of barriers and the conflicting priorities can come in.
I guess, and I'm not going to go into this, so this I don't expect a response, but I guess this is another thing, especially in our mortgage market, that lenders need to be aware of when they are looking at things like proc fees, especially on PTs. Looking at how brokers charge their fees as well, because our costs as small business owners have just gone up again, and that needs to be taken into account. Some good points here. Gary made a good point. Raising tax, not that that's unusual, but anyway, raising tax in whatever format is probably needed. It is. It's how the funds are used by the government should be scrutinised. Totally agree with that. Chris, did big tech and multinationals get away lightly in this budget? Apart from windfall tax on energy companies, of course. That's interesting. Didn't hear anything about that. Big companies. Nick. Katie, sorry, they don't understand why it's not been calculated on a business's turnover. Small businesses will deal with it, but it does not feel ethically right. That's quite an interesting thing. I guess that's the amount of work it would take the revenue to actually do that. And Nick, won't raising the threshold for employer NI impact the smallest of businesses, not small business owner either. So I'm unsure how many companies will fall into this raised threshold. So I think she's done something for the smallest of businesses, hasn't she?
Yeah.
So, and that's important to say. I think the relief for the truly small business. I think if you're employing fewer than 4 people, there's probably not much impact.
Correct. Yeah. No, I don't think there's any impact. If you're 4 or less people, you won't have to pay more. So I think that's about 1 million businesses. So she claims. Couple of other points which were quite interesting as well. Paul, you mentioned about pensions and the change there. What effect do you think that'll have?
Well, I think obviously the change that was announced was that your pension pots would now be a part of your inheritance tax calculation. So typically it was only assets such as property and cash, etc. So that's previously been outside of the IHT rules. So,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to profess to be a pensions expert, although I do have my pension pot, and I'm looking at the implications of that.
Better
But
spend it.
I think that's significant because you might have a pension pot that maybe is as valuable as your house potentially for some people. So people, especially in the wealth management side of our business, it's probably a conversation they would need to have with their customers quite quickly. How you mitigate it or alleviate it, I don't know, but I think that's a really significant one, because we talk about we're on the cusp of one of the largest intergenerational wealth transfers coming up, and pensions are a big part of that. So I think it's an opportunity for advisors to get back and have conversations with their customers, because if you don't plan for it, then it may well affect some of those customers. So I think it didn't get a lot of airtime, but I think that's quite a significant change in terms of financial planning.
Yeah, I think it's one of those that will probably come out and get more airtime as the days progress. But actually, questions just occurred to me. Is that from either of you, Paul, do you think there's anything in this budget that will change or affect how you underwrite cases, either positively or negatively? And I've just thrown that at you, so I don't know. I mean, maybe pensions if it's later life, or I don't know, or expectations if you're a small business owner, someone self-employed.
You'd normally, with tax changes to sort of employed people, you'd normally reflect that in your automated affordability models. So there'd be a slight, but there's nothing really. I mean, I don't believe that employers' NI contributions going up would make a difference to our ONS model. But it's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, it tends to be based purely on income and the prevailing tax rate. So I don't see, unless Paul says different.
No, I agree. I'm just trying to reflect through some of the changes and think if there's anything that we would do today that we'd want to do differently tomorrow. But obviously, I think we'll run the data as we do, and we use ONS in the background like a lot of lenders do. So if those changes which are shared with us throughout the year predict it's going to be a bit different, then clearly that might happen. But I can't see anything straight off the bat that would make me think that there's going to be a significant difference.
Okay, and Phil, this I guess will affect you as a London broker, maybe a little bit more. Is a change in the non-dom status? Do you think that's going to have a big effect? Do you think we'll see a brain drain and people leaving the UK, and that'll affect people applying for mortgages, etc.?
Great question. You hear a lot of talk about just that. That there's certainly there is a big appeal from the lower tax places around the world. I've heard this stat, and I'm not sure where it's come from, but I've heard it from multiple sources about 10,000 UK millionaires moving in the next 12 months, and it's just so hard to believe, right? I mean, the UK was already before this budget. I mean, this is the highest tax raising budget in all of our lifetimes. But the tax burden was already massive, right?
Yeah.
And the UK is an expensive place to live, but it's also a great place to live. And certainly within London, where we're based, it's, in my view, the best city in the world, with so many other cultural elements that would make somebody want to live here. So maybe we will. That there is, however, a huge clamouring from overseas buyers to buy in the UK, and in particular the major cities. So the UK will still have an appeal. A lot of expats will still look to own property here. But I think it's too early to tell. Is the short answer in a nutshell.
Yeah. Anyone else? What do you think about that?
Like you say, Mont. Sorry.
Oh, go on.
I was just going to say, like you say, Monty, there's so many people that have moved abroad, because I've just been to Hong Kong a few weeks ago and visited some friends that have been there for 14 years. And it's obviously, we talk to them about, would you ever come back? And it's really difficult for them to make those decisions, not only because of the income differential that they can earn, out there as teachers or whatever other profession, but
Yeah, that's right.
they see what's happening here, and some of them have got properties here, and they were closely looking at the news yesterday to say, well, will this be an opportunity to me to sell up? And a lot of them will just hold on for the short term. But I think that there is always that risk that you can look over the fence and say, is the grass greener elsewhere? So potentially that could happen.
I still think we're a lot better than a lot of other countries. I mean, you've got your classics, Dubai, Hong Kong, maybe, but I don't know. We hear this every time, don't we? I'm going to leave. Thousands are going to leave. Millions are going to leave. Loads of money's going to leave. But the UK and London it's got a draw, hasn't it?
100%.
Well, equally, Monty, you kind of you can feel a bit down about the whole situation, and then the next news item is the presidential election for America, and it makes you feel a bit more cheerful about living where we live, right? I mean,
I was going to ask a question on that, but I don't think we got time. That's a whole other podcast, I think. So, what was missed in the budget? What do you think? Where do you think they missed a trick?
Can I jump in here, Monty? So
jump in.
We're talking about. I guess we're talking about the negatives, and these were my immediate thoughts when I was actually watching the budget and scribbling some notes. But when they released the actual full statement and I poured through it, housing was mentioned 84 times in this budget statement. That's more than the last two statements added together. And yes, I did look them up and Control F and search for housing. So I'm used to
get out more, Phil.
I absolutely do. Yeah, you're right. I'm used to watching fiscal events and waiting for something that impacts ours, and it never happens. I mean, housing's always been so low on the list of priorities that we never really get anything. And when we do, it's a ill thought out policy which creates bubbles in the market and doesn't really work long term. So to have a huge amount of capital being spent over the next parliament on infrastructure, on housing, on getting people to different places. That there is, I mean, I scribbled some notes here. There's £1 billion for remediation of unsafe housing. That's a huge plus. There's £46 million raised to recruit, I think, 300 new members of planning staff to go alongside the planning reform. Now is a really great time to be a developer, by the way.
I agree.
And I'm generally optimistic about life in the future. And I think within the property industry, there's a lot for us to look at within the detail and be quite happy with. And yeah, there's the obvious negative highlights, but actually, if you dig into the detail, there's a lot in there that's going to keep us all very busy over the next 5 years.
I would agree with that. I think the whole housing and the way they're looking at it, and going back to your point on long-termism, is something that is to be welcomed, and they're serious about it, and they're already doing things.
I think this £1 billion in funds to help remove dangerous cladding is a big thing, because there's so many people that are house locked, flat locked, where they can't sell. They're stuck there. They're worried about fire hazards. They're living in fear daily. But I think that £1 billion sounds a lot of money, doesn't it? Is it enough? And will it be placed in the right places? Will those that really need it see it? And how soon will they see it? I think that's a real question. How soon will these people be able to get rid of the cladding that they've got, get new safe, whatever it might be, put in place to allow them to either sell or to live without fear?
Yeah, I agree. Mr. Kane, what about from your perspective?
I think I'd echo what Phil said. There was more around housing in this budget than we've seen in a long time, and there's some good stuff like this. There's a comment about right to buy receipts just come through as well. So, and I think more funds for affordable housing. I think that's really important. The government's previously always been fixated on building new and helping first-time buyers, but I think we do need to build more affordable housing, and also allow local authorities to control either the receipts of right to buy and or invest and keep that affordable housing within their tenure. So whether any new affordable housing will also have the automatic right to buy, is something which I think the government would need to think about. So I think, generally speaking, for our market, there was lots of good news. I think the biggest thing for them to crack is planning, because I've been around for too many years now, and every time I've gone to a new build forum, everyone moans about the planning process. So if there's one thing that they could do, is if they can just cut through that and start building really quickly, and they're going to have to start really quickly, because this stuff takes time. I think that will be the biggest thing they can do to help our industry.
Paul, from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, that's brilliant, Phil. You've spotted 84 terms of the word housing being used. That's fantastic. So I'm gonna take that positivity, and similar. We've always not met the objective to build so many houses per year, but we've got, using that word long term, they've said 1.5 million right over 5 years. So let's build some faith in that and hope it's realised. And I think you're right. Affordable housing is important, but proportionate properties is important, because I think there are different types of people in the UK. There's people that still want to rent because they don't want to buy. I think we've got to make sure we've got proportionate properties for all. And if the government can address that, then I think they'll have done a pretty good job.
I mean, £1.5 million houses is a massive number, isn't it? And they've really got to go to task to get that done. But the good thing, obviously, they're looking to extend the mortgage guarantee scheme, although, in all fairness, there's so many lenders now lending at 95%, and you've got some great schemes out there for first-time buyers and for people buying at that level, deposit unlocked. You've got the Own New scheme, which is a great scheme. Hopefully that will continue to expand. So I think also having the opportunity and the ability to buy these new houses is going to be important as well, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I think further to his point, I think social housing is incredibly important, right? And 1.5 million homes is a tough task over the next 5 years. I mean, every day that they don't do it adds on more that they need to do each day. And actually, I think it's a goal they probably won't reach, and I think they should be commended for trying to achieve it if they fall short, but still deliver. I don't know, 1.25 million homes. I don't know whether the figure may be, but homes of varying tenures are important. Social housing is incredibly important to ease the pressure on the private rental market. The one missing piece in the jigsaw, I think, which will really help, is just adequate provision of homes for people who are a bit older and are currently rattling around in a 4 or 5 bedrooms. The provision of housing for those people is either good or abysmal, depending on where you are geographically. And particularly with the IHT rules in place, I mean, we need to get these people moving probably a little bit sooner, and they're going to be pretty motivated to do that as well. But there just isn't that particular stock right now, and that doesn't seem to have had any mention in it, and it never really seems to get any mention. They're almost forgotten about.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and that's something that would definitely take into discussion, as I know a lot of people in the Bank of England and other places are looking at that, because there is a lot of older people, as you say, rattling around in 5-bed houses but they don't really have anywhere to go. So it's a difficult one. Okay, we covered loads actually in the 49 minutes that we've been going. So any final words of wisdom to both brokers and borrowers alike that you would like to end with? Paul from Coventry, I shall come to you first.
Okay, wisdom. Me, gosh. Okay.
So I've heard you before, Paul. You're very intelligent.
I think, we've all very much tried. We've talked about some of the things that have come out yesterday that could be perceived as negative. There will have no doubt been people feeling quite emotional, angry, whatever, following whatever's happened yesterday. I think it's really, really important now that everyone looks ahead. I'm sure brokerage firms are going to be doing their due diligence and contacting those clients that are potentially impacted, but also contacting those ones that could have an opportunity. So I guess we'll start to see that on the way through. Coventry will always look to try and be as supportive with brokers, because if things get busy, people still need to make sure they look out for themselves. So it's getting that right balance. So all I would say is we're always going to be happy to engage with people and find out what it is we can do to support the market going forward. I know things like first time buyer is a commitment that we're continuing to want to invest in going into 2025. So if that market picks up, then we'll look to support it as best as possible. But let's look ahead and let's be positive.
The other Paul?
I think there are some opportunities to call customers. I think that we've talked about the stamp duty changes, so there's a reason to engage with your client base around either existing first time buyers that are in the pipeline or we're thinking about that. And by the way, if they want a really quick offer, then MPowered Mortgages is here.
Go on, Paul. Yes.
Get that in there.
Big tick.
But also the other thing, we talked about pensions earlier. I think other clients that have coming up to retirement or have built up pension pots, I think that's something which certainly the financial planners that may be on this call, there's a reason to call those clients and have another discussion and say that we need to start thinking about this.
Ken?
Yeah, I think this is more of a call out to the brokers that are listening, which is that we're a pretty hardy bunch. And, given depending on how long you've been in the business, you've probably been through different scenarios, different threats to your business, and also different elevations of success. And I think the key thing is to stay positive. I think we are going to get a lot busier. I do see that the market is looking very positive regardless of this. And I think if we stay focused, stay motivated, get the right gears and pieces in place, I think we should be able to see this through and come out much stronger.
And Phil?
Gosh, what more to say? Well, I'm a firm believer, right? And there'll be some people watching this who are about to roll their eyes because I'm pretty consistent with what I say on this, that nothing's ever as good or as bad as it seems, right? So in a month, 6 months, a year, we won't waste a second thinking about this budget. SME owners will just revert to paying their staff paying national insurance at a slightly higher rate. The world will go around and life carries on. I think for the brokers watching this, and I assume it's mainly brokers tuning in here, that we've had a pretty tough time over the last 2 or 3 years, and things are going to get better, and nothing that we heard yesterday is probably going to change that. The course has already been set some time ago, and we just try not to get too excited or hope that interest rates fall sooner than they're probably likely to do. Stay fairly level, keep offering advice, as Paul says, speak to your clients. And if all goes to plan and the long-term thinking all comes together, then in the very least on the back of this budget, you'll be able to get to Birmingham on the train about 10 minutes sooner than you currently can. So there we go.
Very good. So thank you. We are definitely out of time. Thank you to our guests, Ken, Paul, and Phil. Do you know what? I'm feeling more positive. Thank you, everyone. That's really good. Michelle agrees. A positive take on the budget. Really refreshing. Unlike the UK press. Yes.
Well, Monty, judging by Jonathan's comment, you owe me some money, I think, or something, because he wants to speak to you immediately as soon as this finishes.
Yeah, I know. I shall speak to him immediately when this finishes. We have started out shouting a Star Broker of the Week at the end of each webinar, so please tag MPowered on socials. You can nominate a Star Broker on the MPowered website. The Star Broker this week is Holly Hensley from Later Life Mortgages. Hi, Holly. When a client's interest-only mortgage expired, they faced losing their family home after 20 years, even listing it for sale. After other brokers couldn't help, Holly stepped in. With persistence and expertise, she secured a new mortgage with lower repayments, allowing her client to save and stay in the home she loves. And that's why we do what we do. Well done, Holly. Remember, we are bi-weekly, so not here next week, but back the week after with amazing show and amazing guests. Finally, remember, you can listen to all of these on Spotify, and do remember to check out the amazing news page to get your voice heard. If you've enjoyed this, I've been Andrew Montlake. If you haven't, I've been Donald Trump, and I'm off. to campaign for the next 40 years. I'm going to stay in power. Until next time, have a great week.